I've met an awful lot of you, and I'm really glad you're here. And the special surprise is somebody that I heard where I live, and I know that you will enjoy her.
But we can't hear. Can't? Try again.
So with great pleasure, I want to introduce to you a Virginia native named Vanessa Cole. Vanessa.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me without the mic?
Yes.
Great, because I prefer not to use the microphone because it really doesn't go with the costume. It just doesn't mesh. So as Almina said, I'm just going to give you a very brief background on myself. My name is Vanessa Cole. I was born in Norfolk, so I am a Virginia girl. And I was a theater major who loves history. So instead of being on the stage, I prefer to bring history to life. My specialties are colonial and Civil War. Civil War is actually even more of a specialty of mine. I have studied the Southern home front for years and years. So what I am going to do in just a few minutes is I'm going to just give some people right up front here some question cards so that when you meet the next person that will come in the door that doesn't speak this way and doesn't wear glasses, when I say, do you have a question, it will be for the people that have a card. That is part of the program to bring you all into the 18th century instead of me just up here talking to you about the 18th century. My ancestors came to Virginia in 1618 to Jamestown. My 10th, well, he was my 9th or 8th great-grandfather, whoever he was a burgess in Jamestown after the starving time. He had a son who was named after him, which was William Cole. He was the Honorable William Cole. The Honorable William Cole was not only a burgess like his father, he was Secretary of the Colony under Governor Berkeley. He was also one of the original 18 founders of the College of William and Mary and helped to write the charter. He had a son named William Cole, imagine that. And that third William Cole commanded a militia unit, so he was the Colonel William Cole. That is my 6th great-grandfather, and you will be meeting his wife in just a few moments. Her name is Mary Roscoe Cole. So when I re-enter in just a moment, that is who you will be meeting, and I hope you will enjoy Mary's time with you today. So I'm going to give you a question, and you a question, and you'll know right when to ask them, because I'll say, do you have any questions? That would be a good cue, would it not? Indeed, I will be right back. Oh dear, why is it always me? It is always me. I get ready to go out and meet one of my children who has been with my cousin all day long, and I get ready to go out, and I find people such as yourselves right here in my parlor. And I don't know how you got here in my parlor. I don't want to know how you got here in my parlor, because if I knew how you got here in my parlor, you know where they would take me? Over to that hospital, you know. The one for the lunatics. And I do not wish to go over there, and so I will just have to keep you occupied for a little while, and I can tell you stories while you are here. And madam, why are you wearing gentlemen's breeches? She's got on gentlemen's breeches, and not only does she have on gentlemen's breeches, she's got on Roman sandals. What is this world coming to? My goodness, not even a petticoat in the lot, I don't think. But it is all right. If I let you out of here, you know they're going to take you right over there to that hospital. So I won't let that happen, and I can just keep you occupied until my cousin gets here to get you back to where you've come from, and I can tell you stories. Do you like stories?
Yes.
Oh, good, because I like to talk. And how rude of me. My name is Mary Cole, and I live right here in Williamsburg. So perhaps before I tell you stories, perhaps you have some curiosities, some questions that you might like to ask. Yes, ma'am, you have a question.
What happens to those who break the law?
She has asked what happens to those who break the law. I love this subject. It is quite fun to talk about. Well, first of all, we deal with lawbreakers in 2 ways. There are the misdemeanors and there are the felonies. Now, if you are being tried for committing a misdemeanor, you will be tried at the courthouse level. And you've all seen it, I'm sure, down on the Duke of Gloucester Street. Well, twice a month, we have the court in session, once for James City County and once for the municipal city of Williamsburg, and that is where all of misdemeanors will be tried. Now, misdemeanors include things such as failing to go to church, failing to pay your tithing to the church, you perhaps have been drunk in public, or cheated at cards, beaten your wife, or stolen a pig. Yes, the pig and the wife, they're all in there with not going to church. And so if you are tried as a misdemeanor, then you will be there at the courthouse, and we love to go and watch. It is so fun to go and watch. It is a rather carnival-like atmosphere. Have you ever watched trials before? Yes, then you understand. So we like to go and watch, and not only do we like to watch the trials, then we get to see the punishments take place afterward. And that is always fun. It happens right away. And sometimes people are whipped. We've got a whipping post. And sometimes you're put in the stocks or the pillory. And you can remember which is which. The stocks and the pillory. The pillory is the one where you put your head in your hands. And you can remember that it is called the pillory because at night you lay your head down on the pillow. And that is the pillory. And you can remember that the one for your feet is called the stocks. Because on your feet you wear socks. Well, you don't. On your feet you wear socks, and socks and stocks rhymes, and that's where you put your feet. Now, sometimes people will have one or both of their ears nailed to the pillory. Yes, indeed. Or perhaps they might have one or both of their ears cropped. Just cut right off. So that is another form of punishment. But in Yorktown, they've got something we don't have. They've got the river by their courthouse, and they have a ducking stool for the gossips. Yes, indeed, it is like a big seesaw. And the convicted gossip is strapped into the side that is over the water, and then the magistrates stand on the land, and they lift it up, and the gossip goes right into the river, and they hold it down, or him, for a few minutes, and then bring it up and do it several more times. That should cure the wagging tongue. So that is a little bit about the misdemeanors. Now, the felons are tried at the capital, and the High Court is only in session a few times out of the year. But there are 4 crimes if you commit, and they are felonies. If you do these 4, well, you're going to hang, and then that is that. If you steal a horse, you commit murder, you commit treason, or you counterfeit money, you're going to hang. Now, perhaps you have stolen something bigger than the pig, but not as big as the horse, but you're still being tried as a felon. Well, you might request to plead benefit of clergy. Benefit of clergy is where the magistrate will hand you a Bible, and you will open it to Psalm 51 and read all of Psalm 51. And if you are able to read all of Psalm 51, then you will perhaps be granted benefit of clergy. Now, if you are, don't do whatever you did, because if you do it again, you don't get a second chance at benefit of clergy. And if you are given or granted benefit of clergy, let us say that you have stolen something, you will be branded right here on the fatty part of your thumb with a T for thief. And that way, whenever you go to shake hands, people will see that brand, and they will know you were once convicted of stealing. Perhaps you did not murder your neighbor, but your wagon got away from you and it rolled over your neighbor, and your neighbor's no longer with us. Well, you didn't murder your neighbor, but it is your fault that your neighbor's no longer with us, so you might be tried for manslaughter. And if you have been granted benefit of clergy, you will be branded with an M in the same place for manslaughter. So that is how we deal with those that have committed felons. Now, there's one story I love to tell before we go on, and this is about the biggest trial I think Williamsburg has ever had, and I so wish I had been alive. It was back in 1718 and 1719, and it was discovered in the fall of 1718 that just south of here, off of the coast of North Carolina, was Blackbeard the pirate. Fiercest pirate on the high seas he was. And so Governor Spotswood dispatched some naval vessels to go down and take care of him once and for all. And a battle ensued with swords and with guns, and Mr. Blackbeard lost his head. Well, they were told to bring the head and the crew right back here to Williamsburg. I don't know what they did with the head, do not ask me, but I know that they put the crew, about 14 of them, inside the jail, right here in Williamsburg. And there they would sit until the following stand trial. Now, it was very simple. They would stand trial with no jury, and they were going to hang. It was just that is the way it was going to be. So, the following year came in the spring of 17 and 19, and oh, you know, I told you we loved to go to court and watch. Well, this was the big one. And so lots of people had gathered, and we've all established that you have seen trials and court cases, so that was not unusual. And so the day came of the hanging, and the great crowd had indeed gathered. Now, you do have those little boxes called a TV, correct? Yes. And you eat in front of them? Yes. And you've seen killings on them? Yes. Then you won't find my story a bit odd. And so the day came for the trial and the hanging, and they had brought out the wagons, and on top of the wagons they had put the coffins, and on top of the coffins they set the pirates. And it was going to be a grand procession out to the gallows road. Well, the great crowd had gathered to come and watch, and they all brought their picnic baskets. Why are you laughing? You eat in front of your little box, and you said you eat and you've seen killings. It is no different, madam. It is entertainment. And so the wagons were creaking down the road, and I'm sure the pirates were moaning. And the crowd was laughing and chattering along and carrying their picnic baskets, and they all went out to the gallows. It is on the outskirts of town. And it was decided that 2 of the pirates must be let go. One had only been a pirate for a day, and he'd done nothing wrong. And the other one was Mr. Blackbeard's right-hand man, and he offered to turn what you call state's evidence. So they let him go, but all the rest hung. And so that day all of the pirates hung, and all of the lunches were eaten, and then everyone went home. What a grand and glorious day. Now everyone always wants to know, well, where was the gallows if it wasn't at the jail? If you live here in Williamsburg, you know right where the pirates hung. It is a funny little square of land, and it is out on the Capitol Landing Road. And nowadays you have a building right there in your time. It is called the DMV. Indeed. But in my time there is not a DMV. That is where the gallows was. So that is what happens to those who break the law. Another curiosity, another question perhaps. Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me who George's wife is?
I can indeed. She asked, who is Mr. George? And his name is actually pronounced with. But no one knows that. It's got that little E on the end. It fools everyone. You were following your phonics lessons. Indeed. Well, Mr. With is very well known in the city, and he lives upon the Palace Green. So when you're walking up toward the palace, he is over on the left in a lovely brick home. Now, Mr. With, he is a burgess. He is clerk to the House of Burgesses. He was the first professor of law at the College of William and Mary, and had some very famous students. Mr. John Marshall, Mr. Henry Clay, the future President Monroe, and his favorite student of all, Mr. Thomas Jefferson. Not only that, he was the first Virginian to sign the Declaration of Independence, and he and one other gentleman designed that great seal of Virginia that you see in the flag. So the 2 men drew it and colored it in, you see. So that everyone knows who Mr. With is. Well, when the city is moved, the capital city will be moved from Williamsburg to Richmond in 1780. And when it is moved, Mr. With and his family will go to Richmond. Now, his family is not mother, father, children. His wife had died and he had no children. So his family is now himself, his grandnephew, Mr. George With Sweeney, his cook Lydia, and a relation of hers named Michael. Now, Lydia was once a slave, but when we were under the king's law, he was not allowed to free her, because the king said we were not allowed to free slaves. But now we have asserted our independence, and he has done just that because he was very opposed to slavery. So Lydia and Michael are both free. Now, when they go to Richmond, that greedy, nasty nephew gets in with the wrong crowd, and he starts drinking and gambling. And pretty soon he needs more money for his habits. And so the first thing he does is he decides to sell off some of his uncle's old, rare, precious, very expensive law books. Well, his uncle finds out about that and puts a stop to that. Then he just decides he will forge checks certain what he was doing, and so he hunts around and he finally finds the will. And he discovers that if something should happen to Mr. With, he will get almost all of the estate. Almost all, but not all, because a small portion was for Michael. Mr. With wanted him to have a future, to better himself, and to have a start of his new life. Well, Mr. George With Sweeney wasn't about to have that, so one day he goes into the kitchen, and he's messing with the coffee, and Lydia sees him, but she knows not what he is doing. Well, Michael will drink the coffee, and 2 days later he's dead. He has been poisoned. Mr. With will also drink the coffee, but he will hang on for 2 weeks, long enough for Lydia to tell him what she has seen. And he realizes that he has been murdered, and he will change his will. Now, that young greedy nephew, he will get away with murder and go west to Tennessee. And he will get away with murder because Lydia is black and cannot testify in a court of law against a white man. So he will go west and get nothing. Now, as far as Mr. With and his estate, after it is all said and done in wartime economy, there's not a whole lot left, but there is something left, and that's those books. And those books he left to his favorite student, Mr. Thomas Jefferson. Now, Mr. Thomas Jefferson will eventually take those books and some other books that he inherited from his cousin, Peyton Randolph, and he will take all those books to Washington to start the Library of Congress. So that is who Mr. George With, is. And another question, perhaps, and then I will get yours. Excuse me. Yes.
Who is Peyton Randolph?
Ah, she asked who Mr. Peyton Randolph is. Well, he is the first cousin, of course, to Mr. Thomas Jefferson, and Mr. Peyton Randolph was, you probably have all seen his home. The whole thing is painted like a burgundy color. You would call it burgundy, but we call it Spanish brown. And it is a very expensive paint to manufacture, only imported from England. And Mr. Peyton Randolph was part of what we call the first family of Virginia. His father, Sir John Randolph, had been knighted by the king. And Sir John had 2 sons, Peyton the elder and John the younger. Now, both boys had gone to England to study, and then they were brought back here, and they studied law at the College of William and Mary, and both became involved in politics. Well, now that we have time going on, you see, there's a little bit of a problem, or there will be with the sons. First of all, Mr. Peyton Randolph will become the Attorney General, and then he will become the Speaker of the House, and his younger brother John will become the Attorney General. So they kept politics all in the family until the little problem arose. And the little problem is with the king. You see, John is siding with the king, and Peyton is siding with the colonists. So it is brother against brother. Now, to make matters worse, John has an eldest son who is over the age of 21, and he is siding with his Uncle Peyton, with the colonists. So it is brother against brother and father against son. Well, John decides that he is not going to stay here and listen to this nonsense, and so he and his wife and the younger children will set sail back to England, and they promise that they will never return as long as these rebellious ideas are going on. But do you know what? He was of the first family of Virginia, and when he died over in England, they brought him right back here and buried him at the College of William and Mary. They brought him home, they did. Well then, Mr. Peyton Randolph will take a new role in our new government. Now, you know, the colonies all will get together, and they will form what is called the Continental Congress, and it will convene up in Philadelphia. Now, I must ask you, madam, who have they taught you as your first president? George Washington. And indeed, Mr. Washington is the first president of the United States. However, before Mr. Washington will become president, Mr. Peyton Randolph will be elected as the first president of the Continental Congress. Now, perhaps Mr. Randolph would have become your first president of the United States had he not died of a stroke in 1775. And just think, if he had not, you might be visiting Randolph, D.C. instead of Washington, D.C. Indeed. So that will go to Mr. Washington. Now, after Mr. Randolph dies and his estate is settled, he Randolph, and as I mentioned, he's got a large library of books, and they will go to his first cousin, Mr. Jefferson, who will use all those books to start something that you all know is that Library of Congress. So that is who Mr. Randolph is. You had a question, madam, on a little card.
Well, I was just wondering about the churches. How many churches are there in Williamsburg?
She asked how many churches there are here in Williamsburg. Well, one. The Bruton Parish Church. It is the Anglican Church, the English Church, and the only one allowed to be called a church. Now, we have meeting houses. We've got a Presbyterian meeting house, and a Baptist meeting house, and a Quaker meeting house, but they must be called meeting houses because there is but one church, and we have no separation of church and state. So we have the one English church, the Bruton Parish Church, and the others are the meeting houses, and the law states that you must attend the Bruton Parish Church at least one Sunday out of the month. And it does not matter whether you are Presbyterian or Baptist or a Quaker or even a dissenter, you know, a heathen. So you must attend church at least one Sunday out of the month, and by law you must pay your tithing to the Bruton Parish Church. Well, the Presbyterians have a little issue. Now, we've got a Presbyterian meeting house. It is behind the Capitol. When you go behind the Capitol, there is a little white barn-like structure over to the right, near the road, right there across from Christiana Campbell's Tavern. That is the Presbyterian meeting house. Well, the Presbyterians had a little problem with the laws because they knew that out in the Valley of Virginia, it was all settled by Presbyterians. And out in the Valley of Virginia, they are not enforced to go to church once a month. And they did not think here that they should have to go to church once a month. And so they took it to the court, and that was in the courthouse. Now, the court was a little bit perplexed as to what to do because the king says that everyone must go to church once a month, and this is the capital. The royal governor is right here under the king, and so they don't really know what to do because they've got to follow the king's law, but there are those issues out in the valley, and it is true. They just turn their head and don't pretend, that they even notice. Well, they've got to keep those Presbyterians out there happy because we want them to stay in the valley. Because if they leave the valley, then we don't know what might be out there, if anything, and you see they act as a very good buffer zone between us and the Indians. So if the Indians come across the mountains into the valley and kill all of the Presbyterians, then we will be warned, and then we can move onward and we will be able to protect ourselves. So they simply decide to allow them to break the law. And that is that. So now the Presbyterians can go to their little meeting house all 4 Sundays out of the month. Now, is there one more question I'm just asking? Was there one more question? Because I'm being told that I need to go out and meet my cousin, Mr. Diggs. And so I have been told that, that is my cousin. And so I have been told that I must leave. And I'm very, very sorry to have to do so, but apparently my carriage is waiting. And so I will have to take your question another time, madam. I'm so very, very sorry. And I will just have to take the little cards and go, and I will perhaps be able to come back and find you in my parlor once again one day. I'm so sorry I was not able to take yours, madam.